Welcome to Cut to the Chase with Rob Chase. Brought to you by the InlandNorthwestReport.com. Alternative news and opinion for the Inland Northwest. And now, here's your host, Rob Chase.
Hi, this is Rob Chase with Cutting to the Chase, brought to you by the InlandNorthwestReport.com. Today our guest is L A Marzulli, and I interviewed L.A. about 6 or 7 years ago on my radio show, but now I actually get to see him thanks to Skype and ask him some more questions, some follow-ups, because I've met reputable people who have claimed to see unidentified flying objects, and if they've seen that, and I believe them, then how does this fit into a Christian worldview? So, L.A., I guess we could start out by saying, are there other sentient beings outside of Earth besides angels?
Well, I am a believer in a holographic universe. I think that, and I know your friend Chuck Missler, you mentioned that you live close to him and you used to go see Chuck. And I believe that the universe that we know is a holographic universe. And what's interesting about this, if that's true, then it begins to explain scripture that we read, specifically where in Isaiah, I'll roll up the heavens like a scroll. The Lord says in the book of Revelations, I'll create a new heaven and new earth. So it's something is going on. Something is going on here. And also, if it's a holographic universe on some level, it also would explain, at least in part, how angels, both the good and the bad guys, can come in and manipulate space, time, and matter and energy in ways that we can't. And they do this all the time. So both the good guys and the bad guys. So there you go.
So holographic universe, does that mean other dimensions besides outside of third or fourth dimensions or fifth dimension?
Yeah. I would posit that when Paul talks about being taken up into the third heaven, well, what the heck is that? That's not anything we can see, but it exists. And he heard on things that he was not allowed to utter. And I've talked to people also who have been taken, believe it or not. And it's the same thing. You don't get to repeat what's up there unless the Lord wants it said. And I think that's where Paul gets, behold, I show you a mystery. We shall not all change. And I think when he was caught up into the third heaven, that's where he got that. Behold, I show you a mystery. And he started talking about the rapture of the church. But look, this is very complex stuff, and no one has all the answers. In fact, when I talk to people or I'm at conferences, whatever, I usually start by saying, if the United States is analogous to the entire universe, is planet Earth in Tampa, Walla Walla, Dallas, New York, Los Angeles? In other words, we don't have a clue. No one who has ever lived has any idea of what this is and where we are in it. Nobody knows. And that's a matter of fact. I mean, scientists can tap dance around that all they want to and talk about, well, billions of years on the Big Bang, but the bottom line is no one knows what this is or where we are in it. Nobody has a clue. And no one knows scientists have no idea of what consciousness is, or in fact, where is consciousness stored? Nobody knows where, you can dissect the brain, you can reduce all this to neurons and all this kind of stuff, but no one really knows how consciousness interfaces with this three-dimensional biological bodysuit that we find ourselves in. So as a frank supernaturalist, I believe implicitly in the God of the Bible. I believe in the scriptural references, and I think that part of the problem is with most Christians, many Christians anyway, is we have a truncated view of the supernatural. We dumb it down into something that's comfortable, into something that we can, I guess I can get a hold of that. But if we start reading the Gospels, there's nothing comfortable there at all. Rubbing mud on a man's eyes so he can see, that's pretty wacky stuff. You know what I'm saying? Just fill the water pots up with water. Boom, they're changed to wine. The lepers that are in the distance. Have mercy on us, son of David. Boom, they're healed like that. So the demoniacs, which scream out, what do you have to do with us, the Son of the Most High? So this isn't, when you start looking into the biblical narrative and the Gospels and what's there and what Jesus actually does, it's not comfortable at all. The apostles are in a boat, and all of a sudden, Jesus starts walking on the water at dusk. That's not comfortable because they don't know who it is. And for all they know, it's some kind of a spirit or a ghost. They're freaking out. That's not comfortable. So we've sanitized it in our churches. We have this little sanitized Sunday school, mentality for the most part. And we don't realize that when the Lord shows up or when Jesus shows up, all bets are off. And it can be very uncomfortable.
I think it's notable that it wasn't until the New Testament that you start hearing about demons. I don't remember any of the prophets, for instance, casting out demons. It wasn't until Jesus made his advent here. Do you see anything significant about that? Because some people have postulated that the Greys, for instance, and lizard men are actually demons that are able to transverse dimensions. And that's why, for instance, when suddenly Jesus appears in a room, it's almost like walking from one dimension into another. Maybe the kingdom of heaven exists within us and alongside of us, so we just don't see it.
Yeah, it's complex, and it can keep you up at night thinking. But the demons, in my opinion, are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim that perished in the flood and also afterwards. Fallen angels are not demons. Fallen angels are a different species, if you will. The lizard people, the reptilian, that may be exactly what fallen angels really look like. They may appear in reptilian. We don't know. There's so much of this that we don't know. But, things are beginning to leach out, as it were, and we're getting more of a handle on things, specifically with the disclosure that happened on Tucker Carlson in 2017. That's Fox News. And I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, but Tucker Carlson had a man by the name of Commander David Fravor on his show. And David Fravor was an former F-18 pilot for the Navy. So he's on Tucker Carlson. So you got Tucker here, David Fravor's here, and over here you've got film. So it's a triptych, 3 different screens, 3 different images on the screen. And it's a triptych, and you see real footage of a tic-tac shaped UFO that was filmed by Commander David Fravor, who engaged this thing. And when asked on Tucker Carlson, point blank, what do you think this was? Fravor looked right at the camera and said, whatever this was not of this world. Now that's 2017. And since then, on Tucker Carlson, they have had people show up, like Nick Pope and different people that are retired from military, talking about the ongoing UFO phenomenon. And recently, about 3 or 4 months ago, they had a man by the name of Luis Elizondo, who surfaced in the whole UFO community a while back. He's ex-CIA, ex-military. I'm not sure about the CIA thing, but he's ex-military, and he headed up or was part of a organization called ATIP, and the anagram basically said, let me look it up real quick so I get it right. It's AATIP, and it stands for Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. I'll say that again. Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. So Luis Elizondo was on Tucker Carlson, and he was part of the ATIP. I mean, that's what he was doing, okay? Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. And Tucker Carlson asks him, point blank, this is Fox News, this isn't George Norrie and Coast to Coast, okay? So it's a whole different ballgame. And Tucker asks him, in your opinion, does the United States government have in their possession material from a downed UFO? And he looks right at the camera and says, yes. And then Tucker does a redirect and said, are you telling us that the United States government has in its possession wreckage from an extraterrestrial UFO craft? And then he kind of hems and haws, which is why this whole thing is scripted, in my opinion. He says, well, Tucker, I really take very seriously my NDA, non-disclosure agreement. But the short answer to that is yes. Well, for those of us who travel in this sort of stuff, we know that Mr. Elizondo just violated his NDA, because the appropriate answer would be, I cannot confirm or deny the question.
Yes. But
he doesn't do that. He just says yes, twice, on Tucker Carlson. That's the second rung on a disclosure ladder. The first rung was Commander David Fravor, who, by the way, doesn't have a book, doesn't have a DVD, doesn't have a Facebook account where he's got millions of followers. He's not tweeting out stuff 3 times a day. He's basically an unknown. And he winds up on Tucker Carlson, which begs the question, how does David Fravor wind up on Tucker Carlson? Who calls up the phone and goes, hey, we want this guy on Tucker. How about next Tuesday? And somebody kowtows and this guy's on. Same thing. It's a managed agenda, as Chuck Missler would used to say. But that's what it is. And they're rolling this thing out. And the church is so far behind. And I've been flailing my arms like this for 30 years. For 30 years. It'll be 30 years in 2020. And we're coming up to that. 30 years. I've written about it, talked about it. I've done so many shows on it. I've written 13 books either on it or directly related to it, because all this stuff just dovetails together. And we are so far down the rabbit hole, excuse me, and what people don't understand is that this is the coming great deception. The so-called revealing of the extraterrestrial presence is the coming great deception. It is the mega lever which moves everybody's consciousness. Everyone on the planet goes like this. We do a shift like a bunch of lemmings, bam, like that. We all move. It's a mega lever. We all move at the same time in lockstep formation once this thing is really revealed. And most Christians have no idea how to deal with it. I'll give you an example. A woman in Hawaii sent me a video of 5 UFOs in the sky over the ocean. And they're 2 of them are like this, trading energy between them. It's the only thing you can describe it as. The other 3 are down below. And she's a Christian and had nothing in her paradigm to help her deal with this. She was totally freaked out. She's been a Christian all her life. I mean, completely freaked out. She had nothing in her paradigm in which to, what's this? I've heard about this stuff, but now I'm experiencing it. Now I'm seeing it. And that's what my talk at Branson, and hats off to Steve Quayle for putting on a great conference. The Holy Spirit redirected my steps on a Monday, and I spoke on Friday. And the Holy Spirit got me up around 3 in the morning and basically was saying, have the people stand up at the end and say, I will not be deceived, and entitle the message off of what Jesus said, off of what I said, when it says that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. So the entire presentation was, you will not be deceived. And the proof text was when Jesus says that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. And so at the very end of an hour-and-a-half presentation, the audience stood up, 3,000 people, and yelled very, very loudly, I will not be deceived. And the whole building shook. It was incredible. And the bottom line is, those people are now armed. They will not be deceived. They've been briefed. And that's what I do. And I'll be going out to San Antonio this weekend and briefing the people there at the Unsealed Scroll Conference. I come back up the following week at Prophecy Watchers in Norman, Oklahoma. And that's going to be a great conference. And then that's on Friday I speak. Saturday morning, I'm on a plane and fly out to California and speak at here at the Watchman Conference. And even though I'm doing different presentations, I will be doing a mini presentation based on what Branson, probably 15 or 20 minutes of my time will be to devote to warn the people of what is coming. This is real serious stuff. And we have turned a corner. We've gone across the line. We've moved well across that Rubicon, as it were. And so it's a whole new ballgame. And I can only tell you this, that its disclosure is ongoing. And the third rung of the ladder might be videos from the 40s or the 50s, or they may have pictures of downed UFOs or retrieved alien bodies. I don't know what it is, but we're on the second one. The fact that Luis Elizondo would state that on Tucker Carlson is both alarming and revealing at the same time.
Yeah, it's funny how the whole genre got going after World War II, pretty much, with the day the Earth stood still. Maybe it'll be that the spaceship will land in Washington, D.C., and someone like Michael Rennie will emerge and bring a different message, for instance. It's interesting because I'd heard Bob Lazar on Coast to Coast a number of years ago, and he is a young physicist that was down in Roswell, but he was brought in to inspect this downed UFO, And for one thing, he said it didn't look like it was constructed. It looked like it was grown out of something. But also he said he was inside, and maybe there's some kind of anti-gravity device that he was looking at. But he also said, and for a non-believer, I think, he said there's a real feeling of malevolence about the whole thing.
I said that you kind of take Bob Lazar at his word.
Yeah, I met Lazar and spoke with him face to face at the Little Alien in Rachel, Nevada years ago, circa 94, 95, somewhere in there, 93, somewhere. I have to go back and look at the records. But yeah, I've always believed Lazar from the get-go. I think he's stating the truth. His story has never wavered. He did see the sports model. He did work and try to back engineer what this element was. Element, I think 115 or 117. I forget the number. I'm horrible with numbers. But yeah, I mean, he was there. I mean, he was doing it. He was living it. And the reason why he went public with George Knapp was he realized that his life was in danger. And if he hadn't gone public, he probably wouldn't be breathing today.
Right. That's what they always say is go public. And then if you're dispatched of it, gets people to, scratch their heads, at least look into it. So, but now more and more, I think since the Trump administration came in, we're starting to realize there is a deep state, whereas before it used to be a conspiracy theory that people, you're ridiculed for even saying that. Now it's kind of like, and I think one thing that actually caught a lot of people, made them scratch their heads, particularly on the left, was the Epstein murder, if murder it was. I thought, well, how can this? I mean, they tried to dispatch him once before, and you think that with the U.S. Marshal Service, a flea couldn't enter that room, but yet he still was killed, and nothing has been released on it.
Nothing's been released. The whole thing's on the back pages. The American people have already moved on because everything is a managed agenda. The autopsy came out and said that the bones broken in the neck were consistent of strangulation. There was screaming from other cellmates. They heard the screaming. He was killed. He was murdered. When you look at the series of coincidences, his cellmate gets moved on Friday. Epstein dies on Saturday. The cameras that should have been on don't work. Okay? The guards who were guarding him really aren't guards at all. They're not really qualified to do what they do, and they miss their rounds. It's the whole thing just stinks to high heaven. He was supposed to give him paper cheats because he was on suicide watch 2 weeks prior. And how does one hang himself with what he had? None of that's been shown to the American public. And there is a deep state. We used to call it the shadow government in the 90s, and we were laughed at and called conspiracy theorists. I've been saying from the get-go for years, for decades, that the deep state was responsible for killing JFK in Dallas, that they had the means to cover it up. They had the means to manipulate all the information. They had the means to do it. And it was a turkey shoot. And the movie JFK is probably as close to the truth as we'll ever find out, which is why all the backlash happened when Oliver Stone, before he even released it, all the pushback and, oh, it's not true. And why are you guys protesting so much? What's not true? Have you seen the movie? Well, no, we haven't. And I get it. It's a composite of several different books. But the bottom line is I've been in the grassy knoll. I've been there like 3 or 4 times. I've been there. And every time I'm there, man, it's almost like, I won't say it's a religious experience, but it is a visceral, emotional experience. And I've been there like 3 or 4 times. It never changes.
Well,
it's visceral.
I don't know if you've ever been on John B. Wells' show.
Sure I have.
He was, I've heard him say I think he was from Dallas, but he feels that there was a gunman inside the sewer grate that did a head-on straight shot into Kennedy.
The only reason why
it's all been filled in since then.
Well, yes and no. When you're at the grassy knoll, and you look at the headshot, right, which is about less than 60 feet away, it's a turkey shoot, and the head goes just like the Zapruder film. Yeah. Kennedy's head snaps like this back into the left, which is when you look at the X and you line it up. And I was there. I stood behind the grassy, on the grassy knoll, behind the picket fence, and looked at the black black X and pretended that I was holding a rifle. I said, oh my God. And then you walk, you calmly take your rifle, put it back in its little container, and you walk probably 100 feet to a storm drain, which connects to, this whole labyrinth, and there's your escape route. And this is why the engineer at the switching yard right behind the grassy knoll wound up, crashing his automobile and the whole deal. And, he was suicided, sure, just like everybody else was. Standing there was someone wrote graffiti. We actually used it in one of our watchers. Magic bullet, magic buildings, 9/11, magic birth certificate, Obama's birth certificate. And isn't it funny how the only person who died in the plane crash from that a while back was the woman who was responsible for validating Obama's birth certificate.
Well, they actually
Everybody
had a video of that it looked like there was a frog man, a diver that came up next to her and held her head underwater. And I can't find that now, but people are referring to it.
Look, there is a deep state. I've been saying it for decades. We called it the shadow government. So now it's okay to call it the deep state. But it is the shadow government. And you remember that when Kennedy got in, well, first of all, Tucker Carlson showed this a while back, last week, that when the OSS became a CIA and Harry Truman was looking at this thing, he realized he made a mistake. And he wanted to undo it, but he couldn't by that point. He couldn't undo what he had already done. So now you get Eisenhower, who warns us of the military-industrial complex. He warns us of that. Now, people can poo-poo that all they want. Then you get JFK talking about secret societies. Strike one. Strike two, he's going to splinter the CIA in 1,000 pieces. Strike three, he's going to get us off the Federal Reserve. Strike four, that he doesn't need it. He's already, they're already out. He's already out of there. But strike four, he's going to bring our boys home from Vietnam. That's all a matter of public record. Who has the power to assassinate a president and then cover it up? Who is Lyndon Johnson? Who is the Warren Commission? Who is on the Warren Commission? This whole thing is the biggest bunch of hooey that's ever been fed to the American people. And of course, at that time, my father, I was just a kid, 13 years old, but my dad, World War II vet, he believed in the government. He trusted the government. Before he got Alzheimer's in his late 80s and 90s, he was going, I got different, I'm not buying this stuff anymore. Yeah. Because he saw it change. He saw it change. So the shadow government is real. The deep state is real. They are doing everything in their power to get rid of our president, Donald Trump. We are now in Russiagate 2.0, which again is completely concocted. If Donald Trump Jr. had been over in the Ukraine getting $50,000 a month from some ridiculous oil and energy company, are you kidding me? This is all we would be hearing about. Russia collusion. Oh my gosh, he's in the tank, blah, blah, blah. Biden stands up. We have it on film. I showed it on my radio show. Trump tweeted it. It's actually on a commercial that you can watch. Biden stand up and say that we gave the guy 6 hours to fire the prosecutor, or we weren't going to give him $1 billion. You want to talk about a mafia shakedown? That's exactly what that is. All that is somehow dismissed, and the fact that little pencil neck Adam Schiff can stand up there and read a parody of the letter, that guy should be fired instantly. How dare he do that? How dare he do that? And where's Mitch McConnell? That was my blog this morning. Where's Mitch McConnell? Mitch, come back, Mitch. Where is he? In bed with the Chinese? Oh, yeah, baby. Oh, yeah. And I'm alleging that. I can't prove that. So this whole thing, we need term limits. Like, look at Obama. He buys, what was it, a $17 million estate? Where do you get the money for that? Book sales? Are you kidding me? All these guys are dirty, in my opinion.
Yeah,
all these guys.
I guess the big thing I'm really disappointed in
is the Fourth Estate. Doesn't, except for Tucker Carlson and a few others, none of this is ever mentioned or covered. And of course, Donald Trump, on the other hand, he's so extreme, and he used the P word once, back when he's a Democrat. But I guess maybe that evens things out, but it just doesn't make any sense. For instance, I remember Mark Lane wrote Rush to Judgment not too long after the Kennedy. And that was the first thing even my parents started wondering, well, why is it? And the other thing, too, here it is, 50-some years later, and the official story was it was a lone nut gunman. Well, then why does everything have to be classified if it was this lone nut gunman? And suddenly Dorothy Kilgallen is about to break something. And
yeah, why is she suicided? Thank you very much. Yeah. You know, one of the things that they released was a letter from J. Edgar Hoover saying, "Oh no, we're not bringing in any other evidence. American people just want to see one lone gunman, Lee Harvey Oswald." And isn't it convenient that Jack Ruby got in there? I mean, the whole thing reeks to high heaven. I actually saw that on live TV. I actually saw Ruby kill Oswald on live
how old
TV.
Were you then, Lynn? Or Ellen?
I was 12 or 13. When was it? November? So that was 63. I was 12.
Yeah,
I was 12.
And
Yeah.
so that was a seminal event. That is, going to the grassy knoll would be like going to Gettysburg or something. I'd love to go down there someday.
I mean, we should go down together. I'm telling you, for me, it was visceral and very, very emotional. Very emotional. Because I realized, in my opinion, that everything changed that day. Everything in this country changed that day. And the deep state, I blogged about this. It's amazing we can even talk about this stuff like this because, my Twitter account is censored. My YouTube account is censored. My Facebook account is censored. I'm censored all over the place. People Google me. I email people. They don't get my email. I mean, it's just how much longer can we do this, basically, before they clamp down on us? If Hillary was in there, everything we're doing would be hate speech. Everything. Just like Canada. You can't talk about Muslims in Canada. Can't say anything against them at all, or it's deemed hate speech. So if Hillary had gotten in talking about any of this stuff, we'd be in the Hooskow more than likely. And who knows? If somebody does get in, they may go back and look at this transcript, and we might be in orange jumpsuits together. What can I tell you?
Yeah.
3 squares a day, God
At least we
forbid.
get a break for a while.
Yeah,
But in fact, if you look at the map behind me, it's a map of Eastern Washington wants to become its own state, called Liberty, and yet they're demonizing that as we're going to be a white supremacist state, or we're going to be a theocracy, and it's a constitutional process, Article 4, Section 3, and this is a lot of Republicans that are demonizing this. It's just crazy. So I've never seen it like it's been before, but looking back, when we were little kids, I remember waving at army trucks when I was a little kid, and then I was in the army driving an army truck. I was getting flipped off by kids. So it's after Kennedy got killed, then I think a few months later the Beatles came to New York, and the Summer of Love, and I grew up in Seattle mostly, but we were a totally different city in 1970 than we were in 1960. I mean, most people in 1960, I would say the majority went to church of some kind, and now it's just changed so much. Government's kind of become the church for a lot of people. And I put up Trump signs all around Spokane County here, and within a week, every one of them was destroyed. And we're the people full of hate, too. But I guess getting back to that, I think the seminal event for this generation coming up was the Twin Towers, 9/11. But when someone says, I say conspiracy theory about that or what really happened, all I say is Building 7, and still, most people have never heard of Building 7.
I know. When we were actually at Ground Zero, and I was asking the docent, and it's just hysterical, you take a camera and you put it on a monopod, instantly you're surrounded by guards. It's like, what are you doing with that? I'm making a home movie. Well, you can't have a tripod. I mean, it's just control. What do you care what I'm doing? Why don't you just shut up and go back and under your rock someplace and leave me alone? But I would ask these people, I would go, hey, where was Building 7? Building 7, where, what? They didn't even know. The docents that were there, the little cheap security guard people, with all due respect, had no idea where Building 7 was. And I run this every single 9/11. I have the picture of Building 7 buckling in the center and collapsing in free fall speed. And this just came out with a report basically that stated that The only way for that to happen would be if somehow every single column in that building would somehow fail at the same time. Well, there's only one way to do that, and we all know what it is, and that's controlled demolition, which was exactly what brought down those buildings. It had nothing to do with a bunch of guys from the Middle East, nothing at all. But what it did do is it gave us an excuse for Osama bin Laden as the boogeyman. And isn't it convenient that out of respect to the Muslims, we're not going to show you the dead body of Osama? Give me a break. Give me a break. And then we go into Afghanistan, and I showed this on my blog last week. It's just amazing that we haven't been threatened with the stuff that we're showing, but other people are too. But we showed that here's the Afghan opium level right here. Right after we went in, the opium production level went way down here. Now it's up like this. It's way up here. It's like 5 times or 4 times what they were making pre 9/11. And meanwhile, in our country, what is it? 40,000 people a month die of opioids.
Yeah.
How many people are dying from terror-related things? How many people die from terror-related incidents in this country or nutcases with automatic weapons? Mm-hmm. Let's run the numbers. How many people from opioids? How many people from opioids? Oh, we won't talk about that, will we? That's the real problem in the country, is the opioid problem, and it's everywhere. It's all over the place.
Well, our county sheriff had a presentation last week called "The Threats We Face," and he's demonizing Christian conservatives in his own party were the threats because, and he ignores it in his thing. He's got pictures of the Twin Towers and the Murrah Building, and but it's all a demonization thing. In fact, people are afraid to move to Eastern Washington or North Idaho because they think it's full of Nazis. And I would say there's probably maybe 50 Nazis, and probably half of those guys are undercover FBI agents, with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. So, but, we do have a lot of communists. People in the Valley are communists. So I always wondered, since they're both kind of cut out of the same cloth, status, we did pretty well against Hitler. We did D-Day, and 10 or 11 months later, it was VE Day. And but then I think it was because the State Department really was full of communists. And then when we, tried to help Chiang Kai-shek, well, the State Department telegraphed all of his strategy to Mao. And so I think growing up during the Vietnam War, too, we were, all our dads were heroes who had won World War II, and yet, MacArthur did his island hopping. It was all over so quickly, but we were mired in Vietnam for years, and now Afghanistan and Iraq. So
18 years and counting in Afghanistan. It's the longest war we've ever been involved in. It's just such nonsense. And the reason why we're there is the opium. That's the reason why we're there.
Oh, like the Golden Triangle. Yeah.
That's the Golden Triangle and during the Vietnam War.
Yeah,
it's the same deal.
Our taxes go to pay the CIA, or else they just print the money. But they're the biggest drug runner on the planet. And Nancy Reagan said, just say no, and we have this drug war we've been fighting that's done absolutely. I mean, the numbers have actually increased, with the whole opioid thing, and it just doesn't make sense. The whole news, everything is so upside down.
Completely upside down.
Truth.
No, I mean, the truth is buried at the bottom of some cesspool someplace, never to be found again. I mean, the fact that these people can just get up there and lie incessantly about, the Steele dossier and Fusion GPS and Comey and Brennan and defend these guys and the Russians, it was Russian collusion. And at the end of 3 years and how many millions of dollars, 2.5, or whatever it was, the Mueller investigation, there is no collusion. And he can't find evidence of obstruction of justice. There was no obstruction of justice. The fact that Mueller did that just shows that everybody's in the tank. But, Rush Limbaugh said something, and nothing new. I said it on my blog weeks ago. We are looking at a civil war in this country. And I blogged about it again today. No one wants to sit there and get armed and start fighting with everybody. But the bottom line is, when do we say, you know what? We are so different and so far apart that we no longer want to associate with you, which is what we did with England. You know, read the Declaration. When in the course of human events, there comes a time when it's time to separate. Well, that's where we are. And that's what people don't understand, but that's where we are. You want to kill all your babies and have your abortions? Great. You want to have open borders and allow everybody into the country legally? That's fine. You want to tax everybody into oblivion and have a welfare state? You go ahead and do it. You know, you want a bigger bloated government and basically more laws and regulate everything? You go do it. You want the new Green Deal? More power to you. You go do it. But you know what? We're not going to go with you. And that means... And this is where it gets really nasty, because years ago there was this, you can go online and see it. Russians, there's that word again. The Russians predicted that America would split into 5 to 7 different countries. New England would be one. Yeah, is that what you got in the back there?
Well, yeah, the people of Eastern Washington have almost nothing in common with the people of Western Washington. In fact, there's another in California. All of California wants to separate from the San Francisco to LA corridor. So it's right. I think we probably are looking at maybe breaking, and it's lawful to do so. But I mean, everything except what's enumerated in the federal constitution is up to the states and the people. So, and anything else, if it's not constitutional, we can actually probably nullify. So it seems like our last best hope to try to get out of Babylon collectively, anyway. One thing I was going to ask you, too, did you ever know Malachi Martin?
I knew of him. I read his books.
Oh, yeah, I read his books, too. So he was saying that the College of Cardinals was heavily infiltrated by Freemasons. And they had a satanic mass there in 1964.
Yeah.
But I saw a picture. There's like a big meeting room. Maybe it's underneath the Vatican. And it's one of the most ghoulish looking built structures I've ever seen. It looks like there's, and of course maybe it's referring to Moses in Exodus, but it looks like there's this serpent, as part of the resurrection, and all these people rise. But it looks like, I don't know, ghosts or something that are coming out of it. The whole effect looks would fit almost in line with what Malachi Martin was saying about the black masses and everything in the Vatican. And I think doesn't the Vatican also have a connection to UFOs too?
You know, there's like, what is it, 1.3 billion Christians who call themselves Catholics on the planet.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful, to start talking about this stuff. Is there corruption in the Vatican? Absolutely. Is there a problem with pedophile priests? Absolutely. And we know that it's a matter of record. And a lot of this has been covered up by the Vatican? Absolutely. So there's real problems there. There's also problems I have just doctrinally with the Catholic Church, which is why I'm not a Catholic. I was raised Catholic, and baptized as a Catholic. But after my confirmation, I promptly left at 13 and became a diehard New Ager and guru follower and peyote practitioner until I was 30, and then I became a born-again, spirit-filled Christian. And it's a whole different deal. So, the idea of the transubstantiation, which is the whole necessitates a priesthood in order to change the elements into so-called, body and blood. There's a book by, oh my gosh, what's his name? Ken, I'll think of it in a minute. But, Ken talks about, and he quotes from the church fathers. And when you go back to the church fathers, none of this is there. None of it is there. The assumption of Mary becoming co-redemptrix or like God or rising, never a virgin, all this stuff. It's not there until like the 4th, 5th, 6th centuries. The idea of Pope isn't there in the first 2 centuries. It's not there. Peter was never a bishop of Rome. He never was the bishop of Rome. He wasn't. He's not listed there. He was never the bishop of Rome. So this is a lot of it is man-made gobbledygook. And unfortunately, many Catholics, including the Catholics in my family, have never been presented with the gospel. They don't even know what being born again is or anything. Now, I've got family members that are devout Catholics. I mean, I could think of one uncle who's just an amazing man. And, Does God look at that? Look at the man's heart? Absolutely. Is he a changed individual? Absolutely. And he loves Jesus, and I get that. But he also loves Mary. So who am I to go in there and mess with him? And I'm not going to unless he asks me a question, and then I'll answer it from my perspective. So we agree to disagree on many things, but our love for Jesus and salvation is always there. So
I
that's
if you talk to some Protestants, it's kind of like maybe they believe that there is nobody saved between Constantine and Luther, just because of that. But yeah, you know, God looks at the heart and the intent, I think. And
Malcolm Muggeridge once said that you know, if you're searching for God, you've found him already. It's the search. And it sounds like our lives are quite a bit alike. You know, I kind of did my thing at the age 36. I became born again, but I'd been an altar boy with the Latin, and I remember suddenly they changed everything. Yeah, Dominic, go frisk 'em, you know, and all that stuff. Right, and then suddenly one day we took the St. Christopher off the dashboard. No, he doesn't exist anymore. And so it's kind of like the Catholic Church went from Dark Age to New Age. And suddenly, instead of the Baltimore Catechism, we had there was this French Jesuit named Pierre de Chardin, I think. And what he was teaching wasn't anything like... It all just turned on a dime. And a lot of people, I have a lot of friends that have gone back to a Latin Rite Catholic Church because they felt more comfortable in that. But it's kind of like the Catholic Church. It used to be a huge bastion, you know, of America, and the world is just kind of like ineffective anymore. It's kind of like going to Buckingham Palace and seeing the Queen. Well, she doesn't really have a lot of effect anymore, too. So it's... but I do worry that getting back to the... maybe the Antichrist will be an alien, or maybe some kind of a combination of robotics and AI that's sentient. And but I do think that it will probably, you know, the word Antichrist, it's also means in place of Christ. So you get like these coexist stickers. Well, anything goes, you know. Whereas in fact, Jesus said he is the way, the truth, and the life. And it's the narrow road you have to take, not a wide road. So I think a lot of these things are coming together. I think we are in end times. And maybe that one of these things, the great deception, will come from outer space.
I would concur. I think the great deception, if it's not it, I don't know what else is. This is the game changer. This is the one event that changes everything. When the so-called extraterrestrial presence has been revealed. Or revealed to the people of Earth, that's the game changer. And unfortunately, because of the Darwinian paradigm, the springboard for that is Darwinism. Because the neo-Darwinists, and I talk about all this in my presentations, the neo-Darwinists realize that DNA is so complex that it just didn't pop into existence. There had to have been a creator. But of course, God in the Bible they won't go there. So they're looking out there, out in the universe. They're looking they believe we were seeded here. That is called panspermia. So we were seeded here by an advanced race of extraterrestrials. And they are skipping over themselves to get that information. And in some ways, I think in the dark, deep underground labs, we've had whistleblowers that have come to us. It's in my film, in their own words, UFOs are real. 2 whistleblowers came to the front. We had to block out their faces and disguise their voices. But they showed us that, they told us that when they were there, that U.S. personnel was working side by side, which could only be described as the Greys, the little guys with the big black eyes. So, and that was one of the guys, that was every bit of 30 years ago, over 30 years ago. So, you know, who knows what's going on now,
I have
right?
a friend, and if I were to say his name, people in Spokane would instantly recognize him, but he was in military intelligence in the 1950s, and he said, well, I can't talk about it, but take my word for it, there is contact. So let's go to Antarctica.
Okay.
I've heard some, Antarctica is hollow. There's still Nazis down there working with Greys or whatever. Admiral Byrd had an invasion thing, and they were repulsed by whatever was down there. What can you tell us about that?
Well, here are the facts that we know about. There is a map called the Piri-Reis map, which shows Antarctica, the coastline of Antarctica, without the ice. So something's going on with that. That's number one. Number two, we know that Hitler and the Nazis were obsessed with Antarctica, and that's why they created New Schwabenland. Fact number three, at the end of World War II, U-boats went missing. I don't know the exact number, but it's more than one. Many U-boats went missing at the end of World War II, never to be seen again. Those are the facts that we have it. Another fact is you can go to Antarctica in the summer and take a plane over there and land. You can't run all over the continent is bigger than the United States. It's a really big piece of real estate. There are reports coming out of lots of UFO activity there. There are allegedly reports of ancient bases being discovered, ancient cities being discovered, holes in the ice, which seem to be leading down to another world. So there's no way to vet any of that, right? Unless you get a whistleblower that will show you pictures or come on the record. So that when people ask me that, I gave you the facts, and then I gave you what the hearsay is, that there, saucers, UFOs are being seen, and the hole in the ice, Admiral Byrd type stuff, that there's secret bases, that ancient technology has been discovered. But all that's hearsay, and we don't know. There was a shot, Linda Moulton Howe recently, she's great, by the way, did an expose with a guy who worked down there, who came on the record and basically stated he's the guy that talked about the huge hole in the ice that he was not allowed to fly over. And when they flew over it accidentally, they were debriefed and told never to speak about this to anybody again. So he comes on the record as a whistleblower, face blacked out, voice disguised, same stuff we all use. But that's what I know about it. Nothing would surprise me at this point.
No,
nothing.
Nothing is surprising anymore. Everything outlandish that we thought was outlandish or taught, that's wacko, is actually coming to fruition.
Have you ever followed Catherine Austin Fitz? Oh, okay. Well, she used to be Secretary of HUD back in the, I think the first Bush administration, and Michigan State, I think, did a study, and they found, of course, our federal deficit is $22 trillion now, but they found $22 trillion in addition to that was missing from Department of Defense and HUD, and they did it through adjusting entries, and they had all the proof. Well, then in response, the government shut all those websites down where they got their information and said it was all classified. We weren't allowed to look anymore. So people also talk about maybe underground cities and different things we've been funding with all this dark money, which is probably more than the, it's all very opaque, but probably more than what we do see in total. And who knows what's going on at the banks? I think George Bush Jr., the stimulus is going to be, I think, $700 billion, and that's all you heard about. But then after the Obama administration, in fact, the partial audit of the Fed that they did get showed that it was like $17 trillion had been pushed out to all of the banks in total. So whatever happened to we the people? Everything is classified, including, how come they don't release the footage from the Pentagon? All that the jetliner slammed into that. So it's out of our hands. There is this deep state, and I think it's all tied in together. But I'm glad that you have a Christian perspective, because that gives us an extra discernment, I think, between what's good and what's evil. I think this whole deep state thing exists, and it's very evil.
Especially with the pedophilia and sex trafficking and all that people are just starting to become aware of. But anyway, it's all very interesting. You're one of my favorite people to listen to when I can catch you, Lim, LA. And so how do people get to buy your books? Do you have a donation button? I'm sure you're probably already fabulously wealthy, with all these.
No, not really.
Really? Okay.
No, we're definitely not fabulously wealthy, but that's why we're. These are the latest of the DVD series, Palm Trail of the Nephilim, Mysterious Mound Builders, Mathematical Mysteries of the Mound Builders, and Secrets of the Supernatural. Those are the 3 latest DVDs in the series. I'm working on the 4th installment in the series, and they can go to LA at lamarzulli.net, LA at lamarzulli.net, and there's all sorts of stuff there. Christmas is coming, and I know he wasn't born that day, but that's when we celebrate it. So you can shoot me for having a tree in my room and tell me I'm heathen. I don't care.
I'm disappointed.
Yeah, I'm a pagan. Yeah, but the tree reminds me of that. You know what? I got something green in the house, so shoot me for that. And I'm decorating it because my Savior was born. So I get it. If you don't like it, go someplace else and eat some sour grapes. I don't care.
Well, there's a book called The Art of Love by Eric Fromm, and he boiled it all down. All love, whether it's fraternal love or love of country or sexual love or divine love, but he boiled it all down to love is giving and receiving. I think that's what Christmas is about. It doesn't matter which day we celebrate it on.
Right.
Legalists may worry about that, but the important thing is, we have the Spirit of the Lord with us, and we pray for discernment and we receive it. So, anyway, thank you for being on today, Lynn, LA. I keep calling you Lynn, but LA. And
that's all right.
We'll hold our prayer. We'll pray for you and keep the enemy from you, Lord. Help Lynn, and that's my ending thing is. That's been today's Cutting to the Chase, and let's not forget to pray first. So thank you, LA.
Thank you. Really appreciate you having me on, and that's why I go by LA. You just gave it away.
Okay.
Thank you. God bless.
Thank you, LA.
Thanks, guys. Let's do it again. We never got the Fatima.
Yeah.
Or Jackie Gleason.
Yeah, I got some giants and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we need to do this again. We never even got into what the films were about or anything.
Yeah. We'll have to do that.
No, I thought I was beating up on the Catholics too much, so I thought I better.
We're in trouble now.
This time anyway.
This has been Cut to the Chase with Rob Chase, where we cover anything under the sun that would be of interest to you, our viewers. Cut to the Chase has been brought to you by the InlandNorthwestReport.com. Alternative news and opinion for the Inland Northwest. Don't forget to catch the Sunday edition of Cut to the Chase, where Rob interviews local pastors on Christian perspectives. Until next time, stay in prayer for God, family, and country.